an introduction about the theme. So many companies use visual management nowadays, but there are many practices that are just simple visual devices, static boards that display information, and sometimes these visual devices, they do not have a strong impact in daily work. So we're exploring the idea of using visual management for visual management practices that have a stronger impact in the work of people in construction sites. So something beyond the idea of routine. We are interested in practices that can be regarded as a recurrent pattern of social sustained action. So we'd like people to get interest in visual management. They must use the visual devices. They must stop during the day to see some information. They must reflect about it. This is the kind of thing we'd like to explore. So the successful implementation of visual management depends on how people interact with visual devices, and also on how processes are designed or changed because visual devices are being used. So the aim of the study is to analyze the role of a set of visual management best practices to support production management, and understand the reasons behind the effectiveness of some of these visual management subsystems. And also we developed some taxonomies for classifying visual devices according to different criteria. So it's based on 2 empirical studies that we've already finished, but we are doing more case studies in other companies to extend the investigation. So this is from one paper that we presented in IGLC in Greece, which discusses the scope of visual management. So we argue that visual management is broader than simply devising or designing a visual device. So we can divide visual management in visual work. Some part of the work is directly related to the visual device, but there is also what we call non-visual work. You need to do some work before you finally design a visual device. So we use the iceberg metaphor in order to point out that non-visual work plays a very important role in visual management. Just to give you some more details about the sequence of steps. So first you need to understand existing problems. You need to identify the user needs, the needs of people who are going to use the visual devices. You need to understand how the visual device is integrated in the process, and finally you design the visual device. So this is the background that we've been using for this study. So about the research method, we're using design science research. Within design science research, we are developing a kind of evaluation research, which is studying best practices from the industry and trying to understand the underlying ideas of those best practices so we can prescribe something at a more abstract level. There are 2 phases in each company. First, we do an overall assessment of visual management. We look at all the devices they are using, which kind of processes, who are the users, who provide information, and so on. And after that, we choose a set of what we call advanced visual management practices, and then we do an in-depth study about each of them. As I mentioned before, we've done that for two empirical studies, and we're extending that to other construction companies. And for some of the visual management best practices, we are also doing some comparative studies with manufacturing. There are different sources of evidences, and of course, one of the good things about studying visual management is that you can do lots of direct observation of work in construction sites. So these are the guiding questions. Are the visual devices static, so the information doesn't change at all, or it's something dynamic, changes every day, every week, every hour maybe? So this is an important aspect. Is it well integrated with managerial routines? Is it, for instance, does it support a meeting? Is it something for sharing information that is produced weekly? How well integrated it is with those routines? Does it support decision making? Who are the users? Who are the decision makers that use those visual management practices? Is the visual management practice integrated with other devices? You can have a set of devices, visual devices that work together. Does it promote collaboration, or it just passes information? It might use a visual device for promoting collaboration, for doing innovations, for supporting a creative process. This is another possibility. One of the classifications that we've been using is related to the connection between the people involved in the use of visual devices. So a visual device might establish communication, one-to-one communication, like it's the most basic form of a visual device. So somebody provides information and somebody receives information. You might use a visual device for coordination, so several people have access to the same information. You create, for instance, information field where people can have access. Or you might use to support collaborative work, right? So this is the highest level of integration. So people go there, look at the visual device, they talk, they discuss, they reflect about that. So this needs to be, this type of visual device needs to be dynamic, needs to be attractive, and so on. So these are a list of what we call more advanced visual management practices, which means the practices that, according to our study, have more impact in the construction sites. You can see that we classified them according to whether they provide information in a dynamic way, if they support decision making, and so on. I'll show you some examples. An advanced visual management practice might be something very simple, like spray marking, right? So spray marking is, the visual device is very simple, but there is a complete routine behind that needs to be well designed, right? So this is a kind of one-to-one category. Somebody has inspected the work, somebody is going to do some kind of repair. The other example is a standardized work visual routine card. So standardized work routine is defined, and then this is made public to everybody. This is a kind of different kind, visual devices for coordinating work of different people. This is the first example. This is a visual look-ahead plan for communal areas in a construction project. So it's highly complex work. It's not very repetitive. So this is made available to everybody. And this is an interesting one. Of course, you cannot read anything. Just to give you an idea, this is a customization choice board. So this company is a house building company. They have a customization manager who talk to the clients, and they define which kind of customizations are going to be done. And this information needs to be disseminated in the company. The financial department needs to use it, the design manager, the production manager, the material supply department, and so on. And this is an example of the third kind of visual management. So this is for collaboration. These are boards that are used for planning meetings, for design management. There are different kinds of examples. I'm going to show this later. The conclusions. So if you want to have more advanced visual management practices, we need to devise them so they are dynamic, collaborative, and well integrated. And in order to do that, we need to do non-visual work before we design the visual device. There are different taxonomies that can be used which help us to classify visual devices. We can do, for instance, we can go to a construction site and do a quantitative analysis. For instance, in some of the companies we've been working with, the sites are very visual, but most of the visual devices are not used. They're just there, it looks nice, but nobody stops to look at the information that is available. And another thing, another conclusion is that the classification of visual management practices depend on how these are implemented, and not only on the nature of the visual device. This is an example. These are prototypes in construction sites. You can use this prototype as for disseminating information, as some kind of reference, so people can go there, look at the prototype, see how they need to build certain part of the building. You can use that for validating a product. That's the third case. This is a hospital room, so you call the client. The client can validate the final product. But you can do something different. You can do a workshop or a meeting in front of the prototype. You can have a discussion, so it becomes a visual device that supports collaboration. So it depends very much on how you implement visual device. It depends very much on the non-visual work that you need to define before you design the visual device. Thank you.